Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, dear guests and our followers, and welcome to our broadcast. And my name is Julia Fominova. I'm the founder of the Human Rocks project. Human Rocks has been founded in order to raise awareness about the difficulties and issues that childless employees might have in the workplace. And more generally, it is dedicated to bringing to light the struggles that childless people, not by choice, have to overcome in our mostly pronatalist world. And another initiative that I'm working on is creating the first Italian association for childless, not by choice people, women and men. So we're here on Human Rocks YouTube channel, and today we're going to speak about childlessness in different cultures. I realize that the topic is very big, and of course we're not going to be able to cover it totally. So our main goal today will be just to speak a bit about how childlessness is viewed in different countries. Is it different depending on the culture type or other reasons, and or are there more similarities than we can initially think of? And I'm also glad that we are speaking about it now when there is World Childless Week going on. So I think that the more work done by and for childless people, the better. And as always, I want to remind our followers that you can chat and you can post comments and questions while we're speaking. And I believe we can get started. Now, I'm happy to welcome our today's guests, whose personal stories and professional activity I'm sure will help us understand better how culture influences the perception of childlessness by society. So, Cristina Chetti, Italian lady living in Norway, professor in political communication and journalism in the University of Oslo. And Cristina is also co-founder of the Norwegian Association for Childless, Not by Choice Women, and the author of the book Childlessness in the Age of Communication, Deconstructing Silence. Tatiana Fertelmeister from the US, founder at Connecting Differences LLC, inclusion facilitator and expert in intercultural communications, and a licensed clinical professional counselor. Paolo Barker, Indian by origin. She has been living in the UK since her very early childhood, and Paolo has made a brilliant long-time career in one of the big four accounting firms. Then for many years, she has run her own business. Sandra McNicol, life coach, originally from the UK, living in Spain. Sandra works with childless, not by choice women as a life coach. And Anna Lunding from Sweden. Anna is a member of the network of the Swedish network for childless, not by choice women, permanently childless women. So we will have 4 topics to talk on, and these are parents and non-parents, mutual assumptions, their roots, and the path towards each other. Motherhood at all costs. How does it feel to be childless as an Indian woman in the UK? Childlessness in Europe. We will speak about some particularities or similarities that childlessness is perceived in Italy, Norway, Sweden, UK, and Spain. And being a childless expat, cultural stigma and struggles of living in a foreign culture as a childless woman. Well, these are only a few topics within that broad subject matter, and of course, after our discussion, there will still remain a lot to talk about it. So I would like to start by asking Tatiana to give us a brief overview of the main pillars underlying the assumptions that parents and non-parents have towards each other. How can we explain those? And is is there a way for these groups to get closer?
Thank you very much, Julia, for inviting me. It's an interesting experience for me to be a part of this panel, because I am actually a parent and a grandparent. In the first half of September, I celebrated my 39th anniversary as a mother and 19th anniversary as a first-time grandmother. So it's
Congratulations.
been an interesting month. They gave me birth as I gave them birth. So it's kind of an interesting process. And as an interculturalist and a mental health professional, I find the whole concept of motherhood, whether it's presence or absence, presence by choice or not, absence by choice or not, to be absolutely fascinating, because there is so much baggage that is put on that particular wagon that it is practically impossible to sort out. Yeah. My favorite definition of culture is this is how we do things around here. But the question is, who is to say how do we do things around here? Yeah. Where do cultural norms come from? Where do cultural expectations come from? Why is it that in practically every culture, motherhood is much more of an expectation for women than not being a mother? So then if you are not a mother, whether it is your conscious choice and you decided to live your life this way, or you are not a mother because it just didn't work. It didn't work out, whatever the situation is. It is very common for the culture at large to see a woman who doesn't have children as she is failing in some really big task. She must be not up to it, she must be lazy, she must not be good enough, whatever it is. There is always that judgment that comes, because whatever our cultural base is not only the way I live my life, but I also judge other people's lives as this is the right way to do it or this is the wrong way to do it. So women and men who might really want to have children, but it's not in the cards for them, or even those who decided that's not my life, I don't want it, in addition to all of that, have to carry a burden of somebody else's thinking and opinion about it. I've been thinking about where it all comes from, and if we look at any behavior that people are manifesting as kind of a survival mechanism, whatever we do it for this reason. If we look at any religious doctrine as kind of a book of how to survive and how to live our lives as humankind to survive, everywhere we see that the woman is perceived mostly as a function of making sure that the game continues. Yeah, there is nothing else to it other than can she or can she not bring the next generation in. If we think about the modern language, forget about old religions. If we think about the modern language, we have a phrase, human resources. Yeah. So humans are a renewable resource, and women are in charge of making sure that this renewable resource is renewed. And if you are not renewing this renewable resource, again, what's wrong with you? Yeah. If you think about, for example, the history of American slavery, we know how people were brought from the continent of Africa mostly to be enslaved in the United States. What might be a lesser known fact, that minority of those who were slaves came from other places. Majority were born right here to mothers who were enslaved. Sometimes fathers were slave owners. Sometimes fathers were other slaves. But the idea was not about, let's make sure that every woman who wants to have a child and can have a child can enjoy motherhood, whatever her circumstances are. That was, again, this approach to human resources. The most valuable resource in the economy of that time were slaves who were able to do the work. And the average age of American slave at that time was barely 20 years old, because the life was so harsh. People didn't survive quite often into an old age. So there was this need for constant renewal of human resource, not humans with human lives, but human resources. And we still carry that mentality. So when you are not having a child as a woman, it's not just your personal choice or your personal tragedy or your personal loss or whatever that is in your personal life. Society tends to look at you as you are failing the task that you were expected to carry. And for that, you need to be blamed. You might be aware of the fact that right now there is the most outrageous thing that's happening in the state of Texas in the United States, where not only women are told you cannot have an abortion beyond 6 weeks of pregnancy, where majority of women don't even know that they're pregnant, but everybody around you is encouraged to report on you, on your doctor, on the cab driver who took you there, on everybody around you. And this report has a potential of you making $10,000 in the process. There is no talk in the state of Texas at the same time of, if we want women to have all these children, let's make sure that there is this safety net and that. Texas is ahead of many countries in the world in women's deaths during birth. So it's not about let's making sure that this whole thing is holistically built and wonderful. It is, again, you are a human resource, or you are a producer of a human resource, and we cannot let you make your own kind of decisions with that. The other thing that I want to maybe mention, and after that I will release the space, and maybe we'll just comment here and there. There is a very interesting thing that culture does to us, because culture is how we do things here. Because privilege is something that we understand by its presence rather than by its absence. A woman who doesn't have a child and who cannot have a child might see me with my motherhood and grandmotherhood as I am so privileged to have all this, multiplication of the family. If, let's say, I'm a woman who is struggling with that, who never wanted to have it, or I just know how hard it is, what do I see as a privilege? Lucky you don't have to bother with this, you don't have to worry about that. So this misjudging of each other, seeing what is missing for me as your privilege, what I have is normal for me, is a very common dynamic from one person to another, from one culture to another. Western cultures, where more and more the choice is to have fewer children because it's hard, it's expensive, it's a big responsibility. Not everybody feels that they're positioned to do it well, or they don't. Whatever the reason is, there is less and less children that are being born, on average for a family. How do we look at those who have multiple children? These women are lazy. They want to have government welfare programs to support them. In the poor countries where women indeed tend to have as many children as they possibly can, A woman with fewer children might be seen as selfish, and a woman with many children might be seen as well settled for life, because many children are social security in a sense in countries that don't have anything else. So what does it mean to be a woman without children in a country where the expectation is that the woman should be standing on her own feet and supporting herself, versus a country where it is seen as, if you don't have children, who is going to support you in your old age? There is nothing there for you. It also is a very different experience. But most of the research on what does it mean to have and not have children still happens in Western countries, not necessarily what does it mean globally in different places. Yeah. So I think that there is a lot of important conversation to happen, both from cultural perspective, from mental health perspective, from human perspective. And the most importantly for me, as I do my work as a diversity consultant, I see diversity as a fact of life, and inclusion is a behavioral choice. So what are the choices that we are making in including each other, in being curious about each other's reality, in being able to support each other in what each one of us needs to be supported in? It can be very different for different circumstances, but the need for humans to be supported by other humans, be acknowledged, be understood, is a very universal need. It's very much a part of Maslow's pyramid. We need belonging, we need the sense of esteem, we need the sense of understanding and support from other human beings. So, thank you.
Wow, that was really a deep view into this, into the formation of the culture, and indeed. Both mothers and non-mothers seem to have very much in common, actually. Well, I know that there is a lot of difficulties sometimes to find a common language for us, but what you just said is very important in order to understand the roots of the attitude that we have towards each other, and maybe to develop some ways of getting closer. It's important to remain open to another type of life, maybe, and to be ready to accept someone's circumstances of life, and not to be judgmental, neither in society in general nor in the workplace. So thank you very much, Tatiana. There is much to think about here. And with this regard, also, I would like to ask Christina to tell us about that interesting study that she's done about how childless women are viewed by, presented by films from different countries. And also, Christina, if you could share a bit about your book, where you, which reflects basically your considerations about being childless in this parenthood-centered society.
Yes, thank you, Julia, and thank you, Tatiana, for mentioning this issue of misjudging each other, which is a very, very current issue. And you spoke about how diversity is a fact of life, inclusion is a behavioral choice, and I really loved that you say
Brilliant.
this. And I wish that we could all include each others and not judge each other for being different. But unfortunately, the case is that childless women are very much judged, not because there is anything against us, mainly because other people don't know us. And that's why I wrote this book, Childlessness. Sorry, shameful plugging of the book.
Yes.
Childlessness in the
Yes.
Age of Communication, Deconstructing Silence. This book, for a long time I didn't know I was writing this book, but basically, ultimately, I realized that I wanted other people to know what it's like to be childless in a society that revolves around family. So with this book, I wanted to explain why there is so much silence around childlessness. But so I wanted this to be an academic book because I'm an academic, and from a working perspective, very practically, if I don't publish an academic book, then to my employer it looks like I'm doing nothing. But there was a reason for this, because there is a lot of literature of research, medical research, demographic research about infertility. It's all very medical, it's all very neutral, it's all very aseptic, but there is nothing of the human drama that childlessness actually is. There is nothing of the existential questions, all the existential aspects that not leaving a biological legacy actually generates. And so I wanted to put this on the academic radar, on the research radar. At the same time, I didn't want this to be some kind of very complicated discussion. I wanted this to be extremely accessible. And so I thought about experimenting with combining research with creative writing. So in this book, I explain about why there is silence around childlessness, but I also tell my own story. So it's a very personal story, and the story of other women I've interviewed. And among the material I use, there is also a study of the representation of childless women, childless individuals. Because this is perceived to be as a female problem, so it's mainly women. But of course, there are also men who are childless. And as I will show in a second, they are represented in a very different way than women. Yes, my starting point was that there is research that indicates very clearly how the childless are subject of prejudices. So they are perceived, according to various surveys, as more untrustworthy, as colder, more selfish, as mentally disturbed. And this very much emerges in the analysis of the movies. But maybe I can try and share maybe some slides which I have prepared, because it's difficult to talk about movies without showing any images. So I think this is going to make it also a bit more entertaining. And Julia, let me know. So I don't know where you've gone. I can't see you anymore. But,
I think she's had a bad connection for a second, so I think she'll be back in a second. Yes. So yeah.
So please let me know how I'm doing with the time. I'll try and share my screen. I've never used this platform before, so I hope I can do this right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
No.
Oh.
If I do this, can you see it?
Julia's just trying to share her screen. Christina's just trying to share her screen, Julia. Just so that
yes, I understand. Okay. I guess I lost the connection for a while. Sorry for that. While Christina is sharing the screen, I just wanted to mention that we have a couple of people here in the studio waiting to be added to the stream, but I cannot do this because here this is the organizer part, and those who are here and are not panelists, I will put the link in the chat so that you can connect and go to YouTube and see the broadcast there. So I'm sorry I cannot let you in, and I welcome you to go and follow the link.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering whether you can see my screen now.
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
Sorry. If I do.
Okay. Yes, I think.
Okay, it's here.
Okay.
So what about? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, I can't see you anymore, but I'll just talk to my screen. So I just want to say, so this connects with the idea of the stereotypes. But I want to tell you a small anecdote about how this research actually started. So in 2013, coming back from a conference on the plane, I started watching this movie, Gravity. Okay, I don't want to give any spoilers for those of you who haven't watched it, but I was very struck by the main character who is played by Sandra Bullock. She's an astronaut, and it struck me the fact that she had lost her daughter. Her daughter died in a freak accident in a playground, and so that's an interesting bit about her story, that she seems to be running away from the Earth that killed her daughter, and she will have to come back to Earth if she wants to save herself. And and I was talking about this with my husband when I came home, and then I realized that it reminded me of another movie I had seen, and this was Prometheus. So if you haven't watched it, it's a bad movie. Don't go and watch. But here there was another astronaut character, and she is actually infertile. She is barren, so she can't have children. And this is made clear in the movie. And so the kind of ironic thing of the plot is that she is traveling to the edge of the universe to try and find out where the human race, where life initially came from, when she cannot bear life herself. So the question that I had at that time was, why are all these childless women in space? And it's a question that, so it was making me smile, but it also made me sad, because I thought, I can't think of any other movies where there is a childless heroine who is on Earth. Why are they all in space? And so I decided to go and find out whether really all the childless women were in space. Okay, the short answer is no. But I looked at 50 films. So I selected them from the past and more recent ones, so from 1949 to 2017, and a range of movies from the US, Norway, and Italy. I wanted really to see whether there were any stereotypes and whether they would be the same across countries. I was expecting that in Norway, maybe women's representation would be more open-minded, perhaps. In Italy, maybe they would be a bit more conservative because of a more patriarchal society, but also maybe more religious, more family-oriented. And then I was really curious about the US. I didn't have specific expectations. Well, what did I find? Well, I found that most of the childless characters in the plots, they end up dying. And mostly they die because of suicide. And I will present just one example per trend, because we don't have the time, but just to give some images to what I'm talking about. So I have an example of a Norwegian movie from 2010. So maybe it's not very known abroad, but it's interesting just to look at this story. It's the story of two couples. There is the couple on the left. So I don't know if you see my cursor. Anyway, so this man and the blonde woman. They've just moved to Trinidad, so an exotic location, and they have two children. So the couple on the right, though, they are childless. And so they're becoming friends, but the couple with children will have some problems, because the husband is having an affair, and so the woman, who's called Sonia, she will have to think what to do with the situation, and she will leave the two children in the custody of the childless woman. Okay, there are very interesting conversations in this movie. At some point, Sonia, which is the mother, tells to Charlotte, the childless woman, "I don't want your empty life." And when Charlotte returns the children to the mother, who has decided she's going to stay with the family for the sake of the children, of course, she tells her, the children, made me remember who I am or what I can be. I'm sorry, I'm so self-absorbed. And after this, she goes and commits suicide in her private swimming pool. So this was a really uncomfortable plot, also because to me, so this ending didn't make any sense, because she had a very good life and her husband was loving her very much, but somehow I realized these are details that only if you're childless you actually perceive. It would seem perfectly normal because, yes, of course, her life was empty. Okay, in another trend that I noticed in my research was that the childless are being killed, and most of the time because they are insane, they are dangerous. One iconic example is Fatal Attraction, which I'm sure we are quite familiar with. So where the female character, she is childless and she's very charming, she's very sexy, until she starts developing some very disturbing traits. And she becomes very obsessive and even violent. At some point, she even boils the pet bunny of the daughter of her love interest. And at some point, she turns up in his family bathroom with a big knife. There is a confrontation, and she is even killed by the family mother. I was doing some research about specifically this movie, and there was an interesting interview with the makers of the movie and how they in fact tested the different endings, and it turned out that the audiences really liked the fact that the mother killed this crazy bitch, basically, which it is quite disturbing in itself. Yes, I've already mentioned the child as being crazy. I mean, this is what emerges really from the surveys where people are asked about how do they perceive people without children. But this emerges in a very extreme way in the plots of movies and really across genders, across genres. Sorry. For example, in Huntsman Winter's War, this is a fiction, in fact, fantasy. We can observe these two interesting characters, Ravenna and Freya. They are two sisters and they are both childless. And this is what the narrator says about Freya. The narrator in the story says, since she could not raise a child, she would raise an army. Freya turned the once green farmland of the north into a frozen wasteland. There she built her fortress and ruled as the Ice Queen. Again, the coldness of the people without children brought to the very extreme. It turns out that her daughter died because it was her sister who killed her. And this is her sister. And she at some point reveals this by saying, I'm sorry I killed your daughter and released the greatest power within you, a power you have wasted on nothing but cheap sentiment. Did you not think I wanted a child? Did you not think I wanted love? But these things were not meant for me. I have a higher calling. And I would think that this actually reflects the stereotype of the career woman, the very selfish woman, simply on steroids in this case. Okay, another trend in the movies I've analyzed is that sometimes the childless become normal when they get through miraculous ways or maybe adoption, they manage to get a child. And one case, one example is the movie While We're Young, where the couple who cannot have children or doesn't manage to hangs for most of the movie, hangs out with a much younger couple in their 20s, but eventually they decide to grow up and they adopt at the end of the movie. So something interesting about the representation of the childless is that they're often portrayed as very childish themselves. In fact, it's interesting to see how the strapline of this movie, Young Adult, is everyone gets old, not everyone grows up. So the idea is that the childless, they cannot look after themselves because they are themselves not real adults. They are children themselves. And we can see this, for example, in other movies. This was not part of my analysis. It's a British movie, series of movies. But also Bridget Jones is this kind of comic figure until she gets finally a relationship and a baby. And before she does so, she binge drinks, she smokes, she eats junk food and lots of ice cream. So it seems the childless eat a lot of ice cream and they drink in this movie. Okay, women are always presented as not being able to get on with life without children, but men are doing much better. And I have here an example, The Great Beauty, an Italian movie, where the protagonist is a male, and he's middle-aged. He's having a crisis. It's related to the fact that he doesn't have a family, he doesn't have children, but he seems to be breezing through it quite well. So he seems to be a cool character, and he's quite happy. The same as for George Clooney. Also, he's experiencing a midlife crisis, childless as well. But again, he seems to be solving it and find his peace. So the only characters in movies, female characters who are childless and who manage to have a successful life are female superheroes. And yet, even the superheroes, they have their demons. For example, in the Avengers saga, we have the character of Black Widow. And at some point, she talks to the Hulk and tells him that where I was trained, they have a graduation ceremony. They sterilize you. It's efficient, one less thing to worry about. The one thing that might matter more than a mission. Makes everything easier, even killing. You still think you're the only monster on the team. And I mean, it's really interesting that if we think about what's being said in this statement, like I'm a monster, because I don't have children, I find it easy to kill people. I mean, these are really absurdities. And yet, when we hear it in the movie, we don't think that this is absurd. In fact, this kind of makes sense. So that's what really scares me. Okay, Wonder Woman is possibly the only female character which is positive and doesn't have demons. However, she also looks very young, so we might even imagine that at some point she might retire and get a family. Okay, so there is, of course, much more to say, but I don't want to take too much time. I thought this was just to present the main trends I found. But I would like to encourage you, next time you watch TV, you watch a movie or you watch a series, pay attention to the characters and look at who is childless. And because childless individuals tend to be either those who die, those who are evil. Maybe, if you want to get in touch with me and you find a movie where the childless are represented in a more positive way, please do so. Also, in my research, I devised at the end some kind of index to establish whether a childless character is presented in a positive and respectful way. I was inspired in this by an index that is being used, I know, in Swedish cinemas to rate movies and there are 3 criteria to rate movies that are respectful towards women. And so the 3 criteria are that there are at least 2 named women who talk to each other, second criteria, about something different than a man, third criteria. So inspired by that, I devised this index. According to which the 3 criteria are that a childless character is represented with a life that is not meaningless. He or she is not trying to acquire a child at all costs, and dedicates himself or herself to other activities than ruining other people's lives, which seems to be the most common thing in these movies. I think I'll just stop sharing here, and hopefully I haven't taken too long.
Oh my God, I don't, I'm shocked, actually. I already heard something about this study that you've done, but I've never seen these slides before, and this is very, very clear as you presented. And the image, I should say, of the childless women is sad and awful, and it's absolutely far from being true. So therefore, I'm sure that there's a lot to be done with this regard, and with the help of different associations and all of you and all the individuals who share their stories, who are open to talk about it, we can maybe change something in this regard. I hope so, because it's really upsetting.
Yeah, I hope so as well. Also, because I was asking myself while I was seeing all of this, what effect does it have? Well, on people who know nothing about the childless, and of course they don't take movies as reality, but then it's this continuous drip of messages that unconsciously then lead to you thinking automatically, without even realizing that childless people must be very little mentally stable, maybe. But also, what effect does it have on us? Because I really got upset watching this, because I was thinking, I don't see myself represented anywhere. And wherever I see a person without children is a person who is completely insane. I mean, what does it do to us, over the course of a lifetime, to see these messages over and over and over again?
Yes. I will just ask the other ladies if they... Yes, Sandra.
Exception to the rule. But Christina, as an expert on this, how do you take Mary Poppins, for example? So Mary Poppins, as far as I remember, was childless. She dedicated her life to children and such likes. But is that perhaps not one positive character, perhaps exception to the rule? She is a bit of a superhero as well. But we're just curious on your views on that one.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I was thinking as well about Mary Poppins, and I think she's such a great character. And in fact, even the mother in that movie, she actually would be very much criticized nowadays, because she's in fact abandoning her children to pursue her political activism. So it's very interesting how it seems all these standards and expectations, they are something quite maybe recent. I mean, in the past, there were lots of childless women, and they wouldn't have been judged in the same way.
But Mary Poppins was set in 1920 or something like that. No, it was the beginning of the century, last century. So, yeah, it's an interesting observation about how things have changed over time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
you ladies have
characters.
Yes, more positive ones. Do you ladies have any comments on what you have seen? Does it shock you? Well, I think yes. Paolo, just a second. I will unmute you. Yes, please.
Sorry, Joan of Arc, wasn't she childless? And she was a fearless warrior.
She was very young. Yes, she was very young and childless, of course.
So there have been role models in history, but they obviously are few and far between. But if that's partly a reflection of most of history has been written by men, and women are not, duly weighted within that history anyway.
I guess just building upon that, what I loved with Gateway Women as well, I think they were pulling together a list of powerful, impressive women that were alive at some stage that weren't children as well. So I think, that's nice to try and get that balance from what Christina's clearly just showed us, which is completely, bad representation in modern movies, but it's nice to try and find that balance as well. So, the more we can portray ourselves as normal people, then the better. So.
Just kind of a thought. I think having somebody to blame is such a natural need.
Yeah.
We kind of find our balance. As long as it is your fault, I'm okay. We do it as very little children, we always find somebody at fault. And I think historically and culturally, so many things are women's fault, Psychiatry is just beginning to rethink if indeed every mental illness has to be assigned to a bad mother, or there are some other reasons for why people might be, challenged, with that part of their health. But it is, I think it's something to also consider, when something goes wrong, where around here is a woman whose fault it is. And yeah.
Can I also say that, okay, I don't want to suggest that there is a conspiracy against the childless in movies, and that there are also more positive roles, especially in TV series. There are some positive childless characters, also female. And so I want to say that this stigmatization, even demonization of the childless in film has also happened with other minorities. So it's a diversity issue. And so, for example,
so.
gays have been stigmatized. So if you, I'm not familiar with the Bond movies, but I've read this in several places how pretty much every single Bond villain of the past was gay. And there are also many stereotypes when it comes to ethnic minorities. Like in American movies, there are many Latinos who are portrayed committing an unlawful act most of the time. So I've seen this also in TV series, European ones, where you always have ethnic minorities being the criminals. So this is not just an issue for the childless. However, so if, for example, gay people have managed to receive more respect, then we can do so as well. And so we need to speak out, and we need to be. We need the directors to think about how they want to cast their characters.
I actually heard, Christina, just building upon that there was the suggestion that James Bond should actually himself be gay in one of the movies as well, which would be so fantastic. But then perhaps the female character should be, I don't know if she is childless or not, I can't remember the James Bond movies in details, but potentially she could take the role of the James Bond or something at some stage. Those mixes would be just super wonderful.
Well, I love how we laugh about this. Actually, this is a sad picture, but we're taking it as something that has to be thought of, and something that has to be worked on. And I'm glad it is like that. Anna.
Yeah. I just wanted to give my personal learning. When I first heard of your research a few years ago, it really helped me to pay attention when I watch movies to other minorities, as you say. I think it's one of the gifts of being permanently childless, that I know how to be non-norm, and that helps me to be more open to other people who are non-normed in other ways. Mm-hmm. And that's really enriched my life as being a human.
And there is also one other thing to consider that is so relevant for any minority experience, and that is the whole concept of stereotype threat. In a workplace, we know that if there is a white guy who is selected to take on a leadership role and he fails miserably, the story is we had this guy and he failed miserably. We should not hire another person who is not ready to take on the role. But if it is a woman, or if it's a person of color, or if it is anybody else who identifies as a part of some minority group, we had a woman in this role and it is such a wrong choice. We should never have another woman, or we should never have another, black person, whatever that is. And that's why whenever you see yourself as a part of any kind of minority group, not that women are in numbers minority, we are at least half of the humankind, if not a little more, but in status, not only you are mindful of your own behavior and your own, what am I doing, what am I not doing, but am I representing any kind of a group that will be judged based on what I'm doing, and that can have a paralyzing effect on us, because not only it's me on my own merit, but the whole big group of people based on whatever I'm doing. So stereotype threat is quite exhausting actually for anybody who carries it.
Yes, thank you for that observation. And well, before we go to Paolo, I would ask Christina to share a couple of words about the book as well, because I would like to mention it among the resources under the video, either in the comment box or under the pinned comment. So, Christina, would you like to share a little bit about the book?
Yes, I mean, I've anticipated earlier that it deals with explaining why there is so much silence around childlessness, but also it's a very personal book at the same time. So it's research, but it's also research that I try to present in a very human way. So my challenge, the challenge that I set to myself was how can I convey the reality, the experience, the everyday experience of being childless, and I try to make my writing as concrete as possible, as accessible as possible, because I really wanted to bring the reader, especially those who have never heard about childlessness, to bring them into our world, because yeah. I realized that it's difficult for people to project, to even imagine what it's like for other, to be in other people's shoes. So at the end, there is research that says you can't project beyond your own experience, and I think that's why I think many parents think that our life is like their life minus the children. Equally, wow, great time, lots of free time, no cares. But that's not the case. So I've tried to make that case. Uh, Other practical thing, because it's published by an academic publisher, the hardback copy at the moment is insanely expensive, and I don't get any of that money. So if you want to buy it, please do so with the electronic copy, and possibly a paperback that has the similar price to the electronic copy will come out. So I'm not greedy. That price is not set by me, and I don't see a penny of that. So
Okay.
I would distribute it for free.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Christina. Well, now we're going to ask Paolo, with Indian roots, as I mentioned, which is the collective culture model. What is the value attributed to motherhood in your culture? How were you raised as a little girl? With what values? And was it motherhood, whatever it takes?
But obviously, being Indian, everything revolves around family. Everything, the social structure, the religion, every social activity is an extension of the family doing something together. And as a child, my upbringing was very much family get-togethers, being involved, going to weddings, going to the temple every week. And the aspiration for me from my parents was that at 17 I would have an arranged marriage, I would subsequently have children, and I would bring them up. And that was very much the expectation for all of the women of my age group at that time. I never actually agreed with that, so it was a bit of a shock to my parents when I made it quite clear that I wanted to study, and fortunately I was clever enough and I did very well at school. But all of my female cousins, or most of them, were not given a choice and very much had to accept that their future was marriage and children. So the norms very much are dominated by either the possession of your parents, or upon marriage, you're the possession of your husband and his family, and you carry out whatever duty and role that they feel is appropriate, which is staying at home, having children, cooking, cleaning, domestic chores. And I would say of my generation, between 80 to 90% at least of the Asian women I know, that was the role that they undertook, and that was what they fulfilled. A number of them in subsequent years had difficult marriages, abusive husbands, were divorced. So the options really for me as a child, there was only one option, and that was marriage and children. I was always a rebel, so I didn't settle for that, and my parents, who were very forward thinking, actually allowed me to go to university. I went to university, and then I went and worked in London. So I was almost unique in being able to do that. In fact, of my generation, there are I've struggled to find any other woman who was allowed to leave home at 18 to go to university to study. Even the ones that were fortunate enough to go to university had to stay at home. So I was allowed considerably more freedom and more choices. And I went to a girls' school, and I was very inspired by my teachers there. I was very studious because the whole of my social life only revolved around home, and I wasn't allowed to go out in the evening, so I didn't mix with my English counterparties and peers. I stayed at home and I studied, and I very much was, that was it, that was my life. I didn't really relate to my peers. I related very well to the teachers and had better relationships with the teachers than my peers. So that was my life: education, studying, and then going into work. And so I'm not the normal Indian lady of my generation, married and had children. There are very few who didn't have children because they married young. Of all the women, Asian women I know, I think there's possibly one or two that haven't had children. One also chose not to marry and had children. You certainly couldn't have children outside of wedlock. And there was one lady who couldn't have children, but what she did was she asked around for a family member who knew of someone who had a child that could be adopted. So the norm is you have children. There was no other option. For the generation after me, they do have more options. One of the benefits of having women like me who have gone on to university and have had careers is that then they've them role models. And my aunt subsequently, although they'd refused to let their daughters go to university, their daughters' daughters were allowed to go to university, and they do have that option. There is life beyond being a woman with children. From my own experience, because I never had children, I've never really been part of the Asian community. I've always been very much invisible. I don't really have any status, and I'm pretty much ignored because I never had children. There used to be questions about, when are you having children? Why haven't you having children? And frankly, I would pretty much avoid any Indian social engagement simply because I knew that is what I would face. If I go to it, my sister's wedding was one of the hardest days of my life because you're all group families. So it was me and my husband on a table for 8 people, and that was my day, and that was extremely lonely. And that has been my life, really, to be perfectly honest. I'm not part of that. I engage, they try and engage me, but all their conversation is children or grandchildren. So that's not really something I can contribute to. We live different lives. We've had different expectations. I know on one occasion, when Julia asked me about this, I remembered when I worked in London, I was going home evening, and I met someone. It was a male Afghan refugee. Just got talking to him. I was much more outgoing and friendly, I think, but I was younger. And he pitied me because I didn't have children. He'd never met me before, but his first question was, do you have children? Oh, no, I don't have children. You must have children. That's the only thing in life that matters. And it kind of struck me how much their life is only about having children. And as an Indian woman, if you don't have children, you don't have value. That's pretty much your only contribution. There are many villages in India where they have very few female children because females have very limited value. It's females in my generation, a dowry was required, so they're going to cost you money and then they're going to leave. They're going to belong to their husband's family. So what use are they? They are a burden. You have to look after them until you can marry them off, and then they're married off as soon as possible. A lot of that has changed over the last 50 years, much for the better. And a lot of it is to do with the growing affluence in India, the recognition that women going out into the workplace do have value. It's not purely about bearing children. So things are moving forward, and there is more childlessness in India as a result, as more women put off getting married. And of course, if you delay the age of marriage and hence rearing children, then there is a lower birth rate. That's an inevitable consequence of it. Although I married at 23, because I had a career, I chose not at that time to have children. By the time I did start was probably when I was about 30, and that didn't work out for me. So my experience is typical of an Asian woman, but atypical of an Asian woman, because 99% of them would have married early and had children. And that's kind of the experience. So yeah, for us, it's you don't really exist and you're not really worth anything. So you have to create a worth for yourself, and you have to create your own sense of identity. I've always been a minority. I've always had to fight for my own corner. So being childless was just another aspect of me being different. So in many ways, I was able to accept that because it was just another facet, and it was just another battle in being unique. But everybody is unique. Every single woman has their own journey and their own story. And I don't see that I'm any more special or any more different than anybody else. We're all special, and we're all, beyond value. And I think that's something that you have to learn as an individual, that it doesn't matter your circumstance. It's it's that core you, that inner strength, and these sorts of things bring that out in you, and they show you that being unique and special is something that we should all cherish. So it doesn't matter whether you are childless or whether you're this or whether you're that, you're you. And kind of, to me, that's the most important thing. I don't define myself as having no value or being childless. I see myself as a powerful, strong woman who's been broken a few times, but has put herself back together a few times. And so others' views of me don't really matter. It would be nice to be thought of well, but that's their problem, not my problem.
Well, that's really touching, Paolo. I had goosebumps when you were speaking, actually. And I like your attitude of being unique rather than different. This is a concept that unites and not alienates, I suppose. So that's the way that we can get together those two groups. Tatiana, you wanted to add something?
I want to add just one point from cultural perspective, and that is a family as a unit, a family as a phenomena is universal. Every culture has some variation of it. But I think there are very few cultures in this world that have family being such a huge part of the whole structure of how the world evolves as it is in Indian culture, where your who you are is so, like I have a friend and a colleague who is from the Indian culture, and she talks about how within the family, like the youngest brother of your mother is the uncle that you can joke with, whether the guy has a sense of humor or not. But the role of this is an uncle to joke with is assigned by culture. So you have all these roles and layers and all of that is much more complex and complicated and kind of written in stone to some degree than you might find in many other cultures. So I think that the experience that Paulo is talking about is significantly more complicated than a similar experience of a woman in some different culture. So yes, so thank you very much for sharing. It's quite a life story.
Yes, thank you, Paula.
One other thing I'd add. Thank you. I would say in the Western culture, you have titles for people like aunt and uncle and mother and father, and they're actually very limited. In the Indian culture, every single relationship has a unique title. So your third uncle to your mother has a different relationship and title to your first uncle to your father, and your grandfather from your mother's side has a different title to your grandfather on your father's side. So it's like the Eskimos have 1,000 words for snow because snow means so much to them. In the Indian culture, we have hundreds of words for different relatives, but in the English language, where you have one or two.
Paolo, is a respectable word for a childless older lady. So instead of grandmother, which is the only one that exists in the English language as a respectable, is there one in Indian? Okay, I was hopeful for a second.
In the Indian culture, childless women don't exist. So if you want a respectable title, you're Bibi, which means mother, or Baba, which means, which is grandfather, or what the equivalent. There is no title for respect, because you don't have respect, because you're not.
Just when you said there was so many titles for
that's
every
not
family member. Yeah. Well, okay.
Paolo, I just wanted to ask you this. Do you think that being a family structure so complicated and all those types of different relations in place, do you think it is more difficult to try and change the attitude to childless people in Indian culture or cultures like Indian cultures, just because they are so much complex?
I think because the world has changed so much in the past 50 years, and because India has become considerably more westernized, and Indian culture has reflected that, there is more change. Yes, it probably is more difficult, but now it's not considered totally inappropriate for an Indian woman to have a career, whereas when I did that 30 years ago, it was completely inappropriate. And it certainly wasn't a marketable feature, whereas these days it is a marketable feature, and it does allow for parents to look for a better groom if their daughter has been to university or if she has a job, which 30 years ago that that wouldn't occur, and two, that would have been a negative. And the most desirable woman 30 years ago was a woman from India who hadn't been educated and didn't speak for herself or think for herself.
Okay, so when you're talking about this, you mean the Indian lady from India, or Indian lady brought up in a different culture?
Indian lady from India, where they were still more conservative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to add something to this, being myself a representative of another collectivist type of culture. So, I live in Italy, but originally I'm from the Soviet Union. I was born in the country that doesn't exist anymore, but it left its legacy, and it influenced so much, at least the people of my generation, in terms of building families and growing up, becoming adults. So just to give you an idea of the family values that we were brought up with, I just tell you this. I remember this term, an elderly primigravida. This is how a woman giving birth to her first child after 26 years old was called by the Soviet medicine absolutely officially. So for us, the Soviet ideology has kind of substituted religion for about 80 years or so. And in the post-Second World War society, there was a great need to fix that demographic problem. So the role of the family and the motherhood was very important. And at the same time, the communist ideals were above all, of course. And they promoted the common goal to build a glorious, bright future for everyone. And to do that, the state needed working hands, more people. So it was considered normal to start family at quite an early age. So I remember growing with this belief that after 25 years of age, you are already too old to have your first baby. So you need to hurry up, of course, and because if you don't, there's something wrong with you. Yes, Tatiana, I was hoping that you would add something.
Since we are talking our motherland, I think Soviet Union gives such an interesting historical perspective on how woman and her ability to bring children into the world is seen very much as a function. A woman and her ability to make choices of what she wants to do is again a function. In the beginning of the Soviet time, soon after the revolution, there was actually a great push for let's get a woman out of the house, let's get a woman to work, let's get women educated before we even got to educating men, because that was seen as a way to break a spine of patriarchy, because traditional patriarchy was seen as a oppositional force, yeah? And so promoting women, making sure that women in the Soviet Union started voting before women in America started voting. You know, women, there are all kinds of wonderful things were happening in terms of pushing women to go ahead. Then the war started, and before the war, Stalin's repression started, and the need for making sure that human resources are replenished was very much pronounced. And when it comes to decisions made during the war, where so many people in thousands and millions were lost, not out of any strategic necessity, but due to poor, decision making and all that. There is a Russian phrase, "Бабы новых нарожают." Yeah, women will make more children, kind of, women will bring, so we don't need to worry about losing some, we will gain some. So that, and right after the war, there was a huge campaign for heroic mother, the mother who has more than a certain number of children and she gets certain kinds of benefits. So again, we need more children. Let's promote that. We need, to move economy forward. Let's promote women being in the workplace. So it's always looking at kind of follow the money, follow the ideology, follow, what makes the decision today and who is the one making this decision. And there is a whole lot of interesting stuff in the history of any country that we can identify. Never, though, are the women who are making those decisions,
Yes. Well, thank you, Tatiana, for this and for expanding this concept, because I was hoping that you would add something. Yes, of course, the Soviet Union isn't there anymore, but there are all those republics still there. And the generation, my generation, and maybe the generation after my generation, they still have all those values absorbed from their very early childhood. So that's why it is so difficult sometimes for women who don't have children by my age, for example, to cope with this, because the idea of being something wrong with me and being less of a value with respect to other women who do have children. This is a strong belief that is still there, and it's very difficult to get it out of my head. Yeah. Well, thank you. Now I would like us to move to Europe, and let's see what is the situation there with the perception of childlessness in Norway, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and Spain. So can I ask Christina to start and speak a little bit about Italy and Norway, maybe some comparison, whatever you would like to share?
Yes, I must say that, okay, I'm Italian, but I've also been living for over 20 years outside Italy. So I feel like I cannot speak so much about Italy, although, yeah, I internalized certain values when I grew up. And when I grew up, my generation was very much made aware that if you had a child, your life was over. Because we wanted to study, we were told we needed to have an education, we needed to be economically independent, and so I grew up with the idea that I had to avoid pregnancy at all costs. I mean, it really. I mean, also when I interviewed other Italian women, I mean, they had exactly the same idea. It wasn't just me. So this notion that your life is over. Basically, which is also quite irrational, but I think it's connected also to a religion that sees sex as sin, and so basically becoming pregnant before marriage, this would have been absolutely unacceptable. And so I delayed getting pregnant. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about it, to be honest. Also because education about sex and about pregnancy was absolutely zero. It was a very much a taboo topic, even in school. And I grew up with the idea that all women get pregnant until their menopause. So that was the level of my ignorance. And okay, the causes of my infertility are unexplained, so I don't know whether I left it too late or what it was. I'll never know, I guess. But what struck me is also my position here in Norway, to be able to look at what is the reality here and what is the difference to Italy. So although as I said, I haven't been in Italy for a long time, so I cannot speak for the new generation. I can say for sure that also in Italy, a woman without children is valued less. And I think that's pretty much universal in every country of the earth. But here in Norway, I think childlessness is a greater taboo than in Italy. And this, despite the centrality of the family also in Italy, although I don't think as much as in India, as Paolo made very clear. So here, here perhaps is the fact that the entire society, the entire social life, the entire country actually revolves around children. So if you don't have them, you are in fact cut out. Yes, and I see this all over the place, all around me. And if you don't have children, actually you suffer more than in other countries, because there are so many of them everywhere you look. So there are actually many children, to an extent that I've never seen in Italy. In Italy, I think until a few years ago, it was quite rare actually to see children around. At least that was my impression. So yes, so what else can I say? That also in Italy, there is also research that confirms this. You would see a stable relationship as the prerequisite to have children. So if you don't have a relationship, in a way, you don't think you need to make an effort, because there aren't the condition for having children. And I think also people would understand that. So they would be more tolerant also of your position. They would probably even think you are very responsible. However, here in Norway, because there is a welfare state that is very efficient, you can actually go at it alone. So you can raise a child on your own without a partner. And it seems like a much more valuable option for women here, even without a partner, to decide that they can go to Denmark or some other European country to get fertilized by sperm that is donated. And so to me, again, on the basis of the interviews I've done, this option is not even remotely thought about by Italian women. So they wouldn't be so free in their choice. So I find Norway a very interesting case because, yes, it's a very women-friendly country, but more than women-friendly, actually mother-friendly. And when you're not a mother, you're just a woman without children, then you are pretty much invisible.
Okay, so can you also share a bit about the association that you created for Norwegian childless women? And I would also like to leave some contact details, if you don't mind, under this video for maybe for those who would watch us later and would like to join.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so this association in principle is not just for women, but for anyone who is permanently childless, men, women, in principle also for those who are childless by choice. Although it seems to me that those who are childless by choice, child-free, they are actually not interested in having any association. So it seems we are gathering more of the people who are childless by circumstance. It is at the moment only a Facebook page, although it has been registered officially as an association. And so I hope to raise more awareness and to collect more people. And maybe in the future we will be asking for funding. So it's all still uncertain. But also we have a Facebook page, a Facebook group that is closed and private for women only. And again, it's for women who have who are permanently childless, so who are not actively trying. So the name of the association is called Andre Weier, Foreningen for Permanent Barnlose, which means Other Ways Association for the Permanently Childless. And the Facebook page is called Den Hemmelige Hytta, which means the secret cabin in Norwegian. And anyway, if people can get in touch with me, and we will provide the links.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Well, it was interesting to listen about Norway because I actually don't know much about that in terms of how the family is viewed there. Because living in Italy, I thought that children are everywhere here. So after that you have spoken about them, I start to have doubts, and it was very strange to hear that Norway, usually perceived as a more cold culture, not only cold country, but coldly hearted culture, is so much child-centered, and that's a surprise for me. And so I would like to ask Anna, and with this regard, because I think that, to my imagination, Sweden is much similar to Norway in many ways. So from the cultural point of view, I'm sure that you can agree with what Christina was saying. So could you elaborate a bit on the Swedish culture and the attitude to childless people? I know that you are part of the network, the Swedish network for childless women, not by choice. So to some extent, you are the voice of them right now. So if you feel comfortable, I believe it's very important to give us a voice sometimes. So if you feel comfortable as well, we would appreciate if you share a little bit about your personal story.
Yeah, sure. First of all, yes, I very well recognized much of what Christina told you about the Norwegian atmosphere. Me, myself, I'm permanently and voluntarily childless and have done quite a few IVFs and also egg donations I never got pregnant even one day. Nothing happened. So at the point I thought I could not even grow a normal plant or anything, but I can do that. I've tried that. But you sort of get the feeling of nothing that I touch can ever grow, which is a horrible feeling. And me and my husband struggled for maybe 10 years. So the first 10 years of our relationship were all about trying to become parents and failing and failing and failing. And all of my friends succeeding. And I thought I was sort of the only one, because the only thing I knew was that people who didn't have kids are quite strange. They are, I got this dribbled down from what I saw everywhere, and I couldn't find anywhere in the newspaper or in the TV programs or in the radio programs. We didn't exist. So it was quite tough. And when you look at the Swedish society, on the surface, it's a quite equal society. Actually, it's one of the most equal societies in the world between men and women. And you think, also being a Swede, you're kind of proud of, oh, we're such an equal country. Education is free. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can have 3 educations if you want to. It's still free. So you can become anything if you want to, not depending on where you come from or how much money your parents have. You can become anything. You can have anything. Religion is not a big part of our society. We're one of the least religious countries on earth. So we don't have that. So on the surface, it would look like growing up and being a member of the society. It doesn't matter if you are a mom or not, or if you're a parent or not. But if you scrape on that surface just a little bit, I so much recognize what you said. Because we have this welfare system, that's one of the big player here that I think people can afford to have a lot of kids. And you also get a lot of reimbursement from the society. You can be home for 2 years, getting paid by the government. Of course, you don't get your normal salary, you get a bit less, but most companies want to attract good staff, and they add up, so you get almost the same salary being home with your child. When you get back to the office, you have a legal right to not work full time up to the age of 12. You don't get paid for it, but you have the legal right. And you also have the legal right to take out parental leave. So you can have 12 weeks of summer vacation. You can have your Easter spring. You can have all the children. If you save days, you can have it up to the age of 12. So that makes it quite tough to not have that part of the welfare cake. And one other reason, I think, is also that we're sort of showered in a culture where society will take care of you if you ended up with bad cards on your deck. Somehow society will take care of you and help you. The only problem is that this perspective does not apply when you are permanently childless, not by choice. Society cannot help you with this. And this is, I think, just a cultural, it's hard to take in because you're sort of not getting your piece of the, I was brought up with this and I'm getting fooled. I don't get, there is no social network for me now. I'm on my own. And in Sweden, you're not on your own because there should be a society helping you. So I think that is one part why it's very tough being permanently childless. And also, one other thing, as a woman, you're allowed to have a great career and being a mother of 5 if you want to. That's possible because you have reimbursed childcare, and at the workplace, there's a big understanding going home at 4 o'clock, picking up your children. So you can have everything in Sweden. So that's another thing. You don't have to choose being a mother or having a family. You can have both. And also we have a strong trust in medicine and science here. Like we're getting paid to have good support, but we also have a great trust in society, in science. So the opinion or the view is that, oh, you can always get your IVFs. And if for some reason, just for you, that strange woman where IVF doesn't work, well, why don't you just transplant your uterus? It's a bit of a, I'm exaggerating here, but it feels like it's never enough. You never know when to stop. And then, of course, you can always adapt. So that's sort of a second wipe of this wipe. If you like, not only that you're a failure, but you didn't try enough hard, because there are so many options all the time. So that's the things we have been discussing in the network, and when I'm thinking why it's actually quite tough to be a permanently involuntary childless in Sweden.
Well, I should admit that I didn't expect to hear anything like that, because, you know, I suppose that in this situation, it's even more difficult to find your role and your place in that society that seems to be so much inclusive. And here is where you think that you absolutely not fit anywhere in any group. And if anyone tells you that you didn't try hard enough to get a baby, it's even more difficult to cope with, especially if there are some things that just cannot be fixed. You cannot force the nature, and if there's something which doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen. So there's that idea that a human being is capable of resolving any kind of issues with the help of technology or medicine or whatever is a kind of an evil idea in this case, because it doesn't help.
No, and still, also by health professionals, there's a big, what do you call it?
Promotion.
No, but lack of knowledge that you actually cannot become a mother or a father, even within that group, because it's such a strong belief in a way.
Exactly.
I mean, of course, people understand mentally, of course you cannot be, but in your heart, being raised in a culture that is so, functioned in this way, it's quite difficult to get that.
Yeah. Anna, can you share a couple of words about that network that you have, and if you're planning to become an association or a more structured group?
Yeah, well, we have currently a network on Facebook that is called Andra sidan tröskeln. It means on the other side of the threshold. And we feel really this name, the founder is Linda Malm, who came up with this name. And it's really because, of course, there is some discussions and TV programs and radio programs and pods about people who are still struggling becoming father and mothers. But there's such a huge difference when you know it's permanent, when you know for the fact that you're not going to be a mother. It's so scary to enter the other side of the threshold. It's so much shame. It's a big black hole. And you're struggling and you feel so lonely. So that's why it's really important for us that everyone who is part of the network has passed this threshold. Maybe you have not accepted it. That's maybe something you have to struggle with for many years. But you know also in your mind you can never go back. So that's a closed group, and we have about 300 members and are growing. We also have an open group for anyone to join. But for the closed group, we need a safe haven, so to speak, so that everyone can feel safe, not being judged. That's very important, not being judged. And also have one place where you can be the norm. That's where the healing can start, that you know you're not alone and you're not a crazy woman out in the space. You don't have to be Mary Poppins doing lots of great things. You can just be you, vulnerable you, and happy you, or angry you. So that's very important.
And you will be accepted.
Exactly. And we also have a homepage, and that's also because it's sometimes we get in contact with media and other people, so it's good to have several platforms. We used to be an organization, but this year actually we became a network, because being an organization really means a lot of administrational work. You have to report to the taxation commitments and administer membership and so on, and have meeting and write protocols. And we were really not interested in this. We were interested in having a safe haven and a platform to connect. And also we found it really hard people didn't want to become a member, but they wanted to be out on the Facebook. So we thought our target group, we need to listen to them and be there where they want to have us. And we try to have meetups, mostly digital nowadays, especially around Christmas, because that's a tough period. We have also the day before Mother's Day, we have involuntarily childless mothers, involuntarily childless day. So we try to have event on that day to sort of celebrate us, focus on us, because that's also for many of our members a tough day. And yeah.
Well, thank you for this work that you are doing. And could you share the links to the group for me to post under the video later, so that someone who is in need can join? Okay. Tatiana and Paolo, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just a very quick comment. As I was listening to Anna and realizing that there is a great degree of loss and grief that goes into this experience and eventually getting to acceptance. But grief is also one of very cultural things. And how do we expect ourselves to do it, and how are we expected by others to do it? And there are cultures where it is get over it already approach, and there are cultures you can never get out of it approach. But most importantly, when a person is dealing with their own grief in their own way, those around them have a great need for making themselves comfortable. And so we often, in addition to whatever it is that we're dealing with, we have to be attentive to those around us and not to disturb them very much, which just adds a significant amount of emotional work for somebody who is carrying a lot of it already and constantly explaining and justifying. And so in that sense, it's so great that you have this network and you have a place where people don't have to explain themselves and where they can just be and be supported by each other and challenged by each other. I'm sure there are moments when people challenge each other in the most caring way as well.
Yes.
Can I add one thing more? Do we have?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In one of the things that we did during last year was actually we wanted to find out one of our goals in the future is to have a more understanding healthcare towards us. So we wanted to understand what is the level of knowledge around health professionals. what do they know about permanently childless people? Do they know about that at all? So we sent out a survey, not a very small survey, because maybe we want to continue this work, but it's quite interesting in the figures. It was actually 40%. It was all different kind of health professional, psychologists, midwives, doctors, anything. 40% had not have any education about permanent childlessness. Around 35% of them had specific education about 35% have met permanently childless people in their work, they said. And I love figures. Because that's so interesting to have something to start talking about, even though it was a very small survey. I think when we need to learn to know what do we know as a society, because if the level in the society is very low, of course we don't exist. So I would like to do more surveys around this topic.
Okay, well, thank you, Anna. And Paolo, would you like to add to this?
There were two. Yes, I would. There were 2 points I wanted to make. One was the expectations that we have as women and the lack of knowledge that we have about our own reproductive abilities and the limitations of those, and the reliance that we have on Western medicine and the belief that that will be able to solve all our problems. There does need to be greater education. I was totally unaware of how poor fertility rates are in my 30s. I had this expectation that once we started trying, there would be no problem and I'd get pregnant. And of course, we tried for years and it didn't happen. And, you know, that was because I had this belief, I had this expectation, we have IVF available, we have these other options. Well, actually, no, you don't necessarily have these other options. It's not freely available. It's in the UK, it's a postcode lottery whether you get funding or you have to pay for it yourself. So I think there's a lot of ignorance around fertility, around childbearing, and whether your expectations will actually be met. So I think there does need to be more information and more widely available to women, and in terms of understanding their own gynecological issues. I had gynecological issues I wasn't aware of, which ultimately led to an emergency hysterectomy a few years later. Had I been aware of them much sooner, maybe I could have taken remedial action, and maybe that would have led to a different outcome for me. I don't know. So I think certainly education and knowledge is important. And the other important fact I think that needs to be picked up is support. When I went through my particular issues, that was about 20 years ago, and there was no support whatsoever through the whole of my journey. There was absolutely nobody that I could talk to. The health professionals referred me to absolutely nobody. I remember leaving one meeting and a nurse rushed out to me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do, let me help." She didn't give me her phone number or anyone else's phone number. How could she help me if all she said was something that maybe made her feel better? I had a meeting with my private gynecologist after my IVF failed, and he communicated that it would never work. And I was devastated by that, and I was absolutely broken for about 6 months. He did not refer me to anybody. At that point, there were no support groups. Almost concurrently with this, I was having severe medical issues, and I was diagnosed with an incurable chronic condition which almost killed me. And that did have some support, and I know that helped my healing journey to be able to receive support from people in my situation, not to do with the childlessness, but to do with my medical condition. And getting engaged with that was a profoundly moving moment for me, and it gave me so much hope that was taken away when I had that medical diagnosis. And had there been some support on the childlessness, I'm sure I would not have suffered anywhere near as much as I did, to the point that the whole of my life I turned upside down because I could not live within it after that situation exploded. So I know the pain that other women go through, and I understand how important support is. And I know how much healing that gave me when I was able to give support to others, share my experiences and help them move forward. And how much that plays forward in terms of the women who receive that guidance and that support, and they pass that on to others, and then communities are built, and it brings back hope and joy. And that support is so important.
Well, thank you, Paolo. There is so much pain and light and hope and strength in what you're saying. I'm just lacking words, and I believe that these are some of the issues that Sandra is working with while coaching childless women in Spain. So I would like to ask you, Sandra, can you tell us a little bit about your practice and a little bit about your own experience of being an expert in another culture? How does it feel like?
The first thing I perhaps would like to say is I don't feel like an expert. I can, I'm Scottish. I've lived in England, Poland, Holland. I travelled around South America for a year, and I settled in Spain 13 years ago. So I don't really feel qualified. Similar to kind of what Christina said earlier as well. I don't really feel fully qualified to speak about the cultural implications in any one of those countries. I guess one of the things I wanted from having children, if I think about it, was to also integrate myself into this culture more so, so part of that of going and your child goes to school and you meet more people as a result of that, those social benefits of having children was certainly something I wanted as I've decided to settle in Spain, and my husband is Spanish and such likes as well. But yeah, thank you for the tag of expert. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure that I qualify on that particular one. However, very similar to what the ladies have been saying up until now, and particularly Anna, I think, homed in on some of the generic issues a Western culture, I think, faces with this. And I think Tatiana also hit the nail on the head a second ago when she said, grief is very different in every culture. Grief, to a certain extent, is very different in every family, actually how we handle this. If I was to take that point, the Scottish viewpoint of grief is, okay, something hurts, let's avoid it, let's ignore it, let's pretend it doesn't exist, because we don't want to cause the person any more pain. Whereas, if I look at my family here in Spain, they have their own practical psychologist, and, is encouraged to open up about your emotions and to deal with that. So, there's a very different, again, is it a Scottish culture, or is it because I'm from a small city in Scotland and, I live in a big city here in Spain? How does that impact things and whatever? But for me personally, and some of the ladies I deal with, which are more actually based in the UK than in Spain, but with the ladies I deal with, what we see is an implication of being ignored or being told to get over it, and that expectation is, it makes us feel even less included. So, that the pain builds up even more. And, as a result of not releasing that, then it causes even more damage. So one of the things that then I do through my support groups is allow some people for the first time ever to tell their story. And even that by itself is so unbelievably powerful. And you can see a shift in the person's face, in their emotions and everything, just by being in an environment where somebody understands and gets it. So it's kind of similar to what Anna and Christina have already said as well, just being part of that community. And Paolo just said as well just now, being part of that community is essential. Very similar, unfortunately, Paolo, when my IVF failed, and I said to my gynecologist here in Spain as well, do you know of any support groups? How can I get some help with this? The answer was no. So 10, 15 years on, that hasn't changed. I struggled for more than a year before a friend with cancer, very similar, who had health issues, said, hey, is there not support groups out there? I said, okay, I hadn't thought of this. It's something that didn't come to mind for me. And by Googling it, and I found a Facebook group, and it was absolutely wonderful. But it's something that the healthcare professionals aren't aware of, and don't encourage in some ways as well. So, but yeah, certainly one of the elements that then in my personal journey was that blockage of grief, and once I could tell my story and I could share it, and then that really helped a lot. The other thing, I guess, that then is kind of common in Western culture is a little bit of that Hollywood happy ending. Everybody gets their child at the end of the story, they adopt or whatever. So a little bit building upon what Christina was saying as well, there's a miracle child appears somewhere. So if it doesn't, did you really want it? Did you want it bad enough? Did you really work hard enough? There's all of these internal voices, as well as, unfortunately, some people voice those voices. But there's that overwhelming sense of failure when you decide for your own mental health to let go of that dream as well. So, it's not that you haven't given up, but sometimes for your own mental well-being, you need to let go of things. And that's something that our culture really, doesn't really encourage or accept. The other big theme that I see in life coaching as well is then, and probably one of the biggest ones of all, was my purpose in life was to be a mother. What the hell do I do now that hasn't been fulfilled? And that's one of the challenging ones, that then little by little, once you've dealt with the grief and once you've got rid of all of that baggage associated with, and by the way, by saying dealt with that grief, to a certain extent, you've never dealt with the grief. It's a living loss that follows us through life, and in different stages of our life, then it comes back to remind us. If we think of some of the social losses and such likes, some people I've dealt with have been divorced because they couldn't have children. It was super important to their husband, and it results in a social loss of being divorced. There's harassment from parents or in-laws who wanted to be grandparents, so there's pressure from there as well. But also, as you go into your older age, who's going to look after you? Who will be by my side when I'm sick and poorly and in my last days? These are really big and difficult questions that don't just end when you're 45 or 50 or when that window seems to change. But as people become grandparents and as you age, this is something that changes and evolves with you. And what you tend to find is there's different waves of grief that actually come at different moments in your life as well. So, but yeah, before I did that side thing, but yeah, one of those big things as well is trying to identify your new purpose, and that's not an easy thing to do if this was your dream. So, yeah, in terms of some of the big cultural themes that I see common across all of the cultures that I've dealt with, then those would be some of the big ones that then I would mention.
Well, thank you, Sandra. I just wanted to ask Tatiana if you can still remain with us for a couple of minutes, or if whoever needs to leave early. I understand that we a little bit went over the time that we expected, but it's a very important conversation. But whoever wants or needs to leave early, you just do so, because we understand. Okay. And yes.
I just wanted kind of maybe as a way of saying goodbye. In this last 18 months or so, I've been doing a lot of collective healing work just because of what's going on and what's needed. And one thing that comes up repeatedly in that space is this idea of turning your pain into purpose. And I hear so much of it today in this conversation. When the pain kind of is transformed into something that is making a positive difference for those around. Yeah. And in my own kind of humble way, I have this phrase that came to me in meditation some years ago, and maybe because I meditate so rarely, I grab onto this phrase. And it's not very much for polite society, but here is us girls, yes. So goes like this: it takes a lot of shit to grow a flower. And I think that
Literally.
literally, yeah. And I think that there is a lot of flowers growing here in all kinds of ways. And I am just here to thank you and to share my admiration for what you went through, what you keep going through, and what you are doing with really rather profound pain that life kind of served you. So
thank you, Tatiana, for the understanding, and for your accepting this discussion, because you are a parent, and sometimes it's difficult for us to find a common language, and we too have kind of assumptions towards parents that they could not understand us, period. But it's not like that, and thank you for showing us your support and the deep understanding of this kind of pain.
Also as a parent, where are the support groups for those who wanted to be grandparents? And
yes.
cannot be, there
for
are
our maybe our mothers.
whatever our realities are. If there was something that I really wanted to have, and there is nothing I can do to make it happen. There are plenty of women of my age who are perfectly fine not being grandparents. And there are those for whom it is a really deep, heart-sized hole, so that is there as well. And if I am feeling that pain, where do I put it? Do I put it on my daughter or do I take it on my son, or do I take it somewhere else? So as they say, hurt people, yeah. And so how we're dealing with our pain makes a huge difference for many around us, immediately connected with us and maybe not so. So thank you all very much. I'm sorry I can't be here to continue, but God willing, we will see each other again in all kinds of ways.
I hope so. Thank you very much, Tatiana.
Be very well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to build a little bit on what Tatiana said and linking into what Anna said as well. And perhaps there's actually more groups based upon the grandmother comment that she made, But looking just at the motherhood role, there's mothers by choice, mothers not by choice, the childless by choice, and the childless not by choice. My personal belief is that we don't want to actually take anything away from any of those other groups. We're just trying to put a voice into our group to not balance it out, but just to give us, a voice out there as well. So, but potentially that's even bigger now with the grandmothers by choice, not by choice, or whatever group as well that then Tatiana just mentioned. So, but yeah, also I am so unbelievably privileged and proud to be part of this group. I've never really came across so many intellectual, intelligent, sensitive, educated, I don't know, really powerful, strong women who have came through this experience, and it's just an amazing, amazing community to be part of. So thank you to you ladies as well for representing that, because it's just every single person I touch in this area is just super special. Going back to Paolo's comments earlier, you know, we're all unique and we're all bringing something really special into this community. So I don't know, just I'm going to get emotional now.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Could you also leave us some contact details for those who maybe would like to get some help from you?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for this work that you're doing, and for our group on Facebook, and for our meetups, and for creating that safe space. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And and I thank you all, ladies, for sharing your experiences. And we could probably talk for hours about this, and when there would still have remained a lot to uncover. And what I'd like to point out, though, is that as we have seen from this discussion, being childless and the childlessness as a concept is a kind of a universal thing and can be attributed to any culture because it somehow touches the existential issues and the very inner strengths of our souls. So thank you all for this insightful and this deep discussion, and for the work that you are doing, every one of you, to give voice to our community, so that the society comes closer to us, opens up to us, and tries to understand us better. And thank you for the viewers, and thank you for sharing comments in the private chat. I will leave all the links that we have promised under this video, and please keep following Human Rocks, and come to our groups on Facebook. Knock on every door that you can think you can get help. Thank you very much, ladies. And
thank you, Julia.
See you next time.
So much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.